Howdy, welcome back for more Space Engineers. And today we're going to hit on some highlights for the latest update. Some of the things that I think are really cool and noteworthy. And then we're going to work on an autopilot system. The autopilot will be able to do two things. One, it will be able to launch you from your landing bay. Pretty simple. I'm pretty sure anybody can set that up. Two, we're going to make it come and land you on your landing bay from anywhere in the world. So you'll be able to hit the button, it'll take you home and land you all on its own. So let's get to it because I think you're going to like what you're going to see. All right, so we're going to start with the controversial stuff and the paid for items because I think that's where most of the controversy is going to be. These right here, we have speeder bike seats. We can actually make a hover bike. The community has been wanting this forever. And they put it behind a paywall. It's not a game-breaking mechanic. It's not something that's going to actually hurt anybody to not have it. But everybody wants it. Which I guess kind of makes sense because they need money to fund the development of the really good stuff over there. Really important stuff. And that's all free content. So if I pay for a little bit extra, that's cool, but doesn't give me an advantage over other players, I'm cool with that. I will gladly pay for something that's just aesthetic, but I think this is going to be kind of controversial. That way we can have more people play with the really cool stuff that's free. So I know that's going to be controversial, but I'm actually glad they did it because I think it's a really cool deal. Now these top-mounted cameras, I don't think they're controversial. I think the small grid version is really cool. I love it, and I'm probably going to use it. It fits so nice on the block and sits there so nicely. I love it. However, the large grid version, I question the placement. Yeah, I'm not sure how useful that's going to be like that. So, yeah, that's yet to be seen. The signs here, I think they're cool. I think that you should take a moment to maybe screenshot this and take a look at them. The only two that are different between small grid and large grid are the two on the floor. The large grid versions are what you see, whereas they're different on small grid. Now, I could see people getting upset about this because this was in their teaser so much, but this block appears to be behind a paywall. And it's just an emotion screen. You could easily recreate this with an LCD screen and some custom images, so I don't see that as being a big deal, but I understand if people get upset about it, and I don't think they should, though. This is actually really cool block, and you can just change the emotions on it through a setting. And this one might be a little bit controversial. I gotta point out, though, the new air vents, awesome. I love that skin. It's just a reskin, though. This is an inset light, and it allows for a light that's already reset into the wall, and that appears to be behind a paywall too. Is it game breaking? No, not in any way, shape, or form. Does it allow for some nice compact builds because you can now fit a button panel underneath a light in your one long airlock? Yeah, it does. So, yeah, it could cause some controversy. Now, we're done with the controversial stuff. And I don't think it should be too controversial, but I could see it being that way. Now let's look at the free stuff. And this is where all of the really important stuff happened. All of the really important stuff happened here. You've got access passageways, the Willis Ducks. Everybody's been wanting that. They now have it in game. Love it. You've got the event controller. The event controller is an if-then block. How simple is that? If true, do this. If false, do this. Everybody's been wanting that. It's available now. It's cool. I love it. And the artwork on this block is actually really good. The sides look really nice. They've got many useful textures on the sides of this block. And some little Easter eggs from the artists. Escape's bid. if you read this, have a nice day. I will. Thank you. I hope you have a nice day too. Let's look at the real meat of this, what everybody cares about, the full block air vent. I'm just kidding. I love that block. I think it's cool, but that's not one of the big blocks. That's not what everybody cares about. What everybody cares about are these 5 blocks right here. This one is it's the pilot of the ship. Well, sorry, it's not the pilot. It's the ensign. He takes orders. He flies the plane. He flies the spaceship. He doesn't make decisions. But he's got 4 bosses. 4 captains, 1 ship. We got the AI recorder. It can record waypoints and flight paths, and it can fly through those flight paths and waypoints. It's not perfect, but it does work pretty damn well. And I really like it. I think you're going to really love what it does. And at each waypoint, it can actually perform actions. We'll go through some of the finer details when we go through looking at how to set that up. Now, this one is the defensive block. It can be on. Actually, we're going to skip that one for now. This one is the basic tasks block, and I should have that one over there. This one does things like follow my base and fly around it, do patrols. Follow me and fly around me, do patrols. So while this one is working, the recorder or the simple tasks, while either of those are working, these 2 can be running in the background. And this one and the defensive and the assault are both looking for enemies. And if they find enemies, they perform whatever action they're supposed to do. This one will run away, or defensive maneuvers, or whatever, to get out of the line of fire and be safe. This one runs into the fire. So, run away, attack. Run away, attack. You're never going to want to use the recorder and the simple tasks at the same time. I don't think you can, actually. And you're not going to want to use the defensive and the offensive at the same time. But they really perform pretty cool tasks, because you can tell a drone, put this block on there, the flight block, and simple tasks, and the attack one. Put those 3 blocks on there, you tell the drone, hey, hop up in the air, fly around my base, and look for enemies to keep me safe. These 2 blocks will work together to tell that block to fly up and fly around and keep you safe. Absolutely love it. I think they're a great addition, and I think those probably are some of the most important blocks added in this update. But on that same theme, so as a change to this block, the custom turret controller is amazing. It now runs an entire solar array. You needed a programmable block to be able to do this before. You couldn't do this without a programmable block. I made drones before we had those, without programmable blocks. I could make a drone without a programmable block before. I couldn't do this without a programmable block. So I can make this solar array always track the sun using this custom turret controller, but you need to do it through a button panel. I don't know why they did this, but the only way to get to this option right here is through a control seat or a button panel, and that's it. Those are the only options to get to it and actually set this up and tell it to always look at the sun. But still, minor critique on that. This adds so much to the game for people who are running without programmable blocks, and it's an understated, unsung hero of this update. Now, let's get to the more important part. We're going to look at how to set up some autopilot. Alright, so we're modifying the KiZo here. And one of the key things you're going to notice right away is I now have upward thrust on this. I just cut out some blocks and added the upward thrust because the AI requires some upward thrust to function properly. So you're gonna want to do that. The blocks we've added, I've just cut out the center down here, and I've just added the blocks we need. We need the recorder block. We need 2 of them. This one is actually going to be right above. Sorry, this one is right above the center of the connector. You're going to want one centered right above the connector because it's going to remember a GPS point. It will not remember orientation. So it has to be directly above that connector, so the connector is always centered. You're going to want that for landing. The other recorder, that's the takeoff recorder. That's the autopilot for takeoff. It doesn't need to be centered, but I'd like it to be close. So we've got it just 1 block back, and that's so I can recover this once I'm done explaining. So this one, we're going to set a point up in the air relative to this base. And then the move block, we also need this one because it's going to take its directions from those 2 blocks. Alright, and then we're going to need 3 timer blocks. Also, the event controller. The event controller is a bonus block. You don't need it, but it's really useful. This event controller is specifically controlling the thrusters based on if the thrusters are if the landing gear is docked, then the thrusters are off. If any of the landing gear are locked, the thrusters are off. If all of them are unlocked, then the thrusters are on. So basically, if it becomes undocked from the ship, it won't just fall or move around and crash. The thrusters will come on and keep it hovering. And once you dock it, you won't burn a hole in the ship. Now, let's come in and look at how to set all that up. I have toolbar 3. I've already set up the buttons there. Those are to set points on the path for the recorder block. Now, in the recorder block, you're going to want to come down, and the first thing you want to do for both of these recorders is a reference beacon. You set a reference beacon to a beacon on your mobile base. This ensures that all the GPS points are relative to your base rather than relative to the world. This is critical. You have to do this for both of them. The other thing you want to do is for the event controller, you're going to come down here and you're going to select landing gear locked. You have plenty of things to choose from here, but we're specifically focused on the landing gear right now. So we've selected the landing gear out of these available blocks and moved them down here into the selected blocks. Make sure this is not checked, because otherwise it's only true if all of the landing gear are locked. So you want to come in here afterwards and hit select actions, and if true and all landing gear is locked, then you want to turn off the thrusters. If false and all the landing gear is unlocked, the thrusters turn on. So this will handle the thrusters for us. We no longer need them on our bar. I think that's rather cool, actually. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to grab a timer block. And I've already named them for what they're doing. We want a timer block for docking. And we're going to set that to as short a delay as possible. And we're going to set up the actions. In the actions, we want it to turn off AI behavior. So AI behavior off on the move block. AI behavior off on the recorder block. And AI recorder off on... There we go. AI behavior off on the other recorder block. We also want to come in and turn precision mode back on, just in case it got turned off, and turn collision avoidance back on, because it will get turned off. And they're important in the future, but we have to turn them off to dock. We'll get to that in a moment. So these are really important steps right here. We also want to come in and we want to tell the connector to lock and the landing gear to lock. So that's going to be our docking sequence. It's just going to perform all of those actions once it gets to the landed position. Now, timer block land and timer block take off. This is a timer. We're actually going to use that to start the sequence of docking and undocking. So the timer block take off, we're going to again set that to a very short time. We're going to set up the actions here. And in the actions, we want this to come in and trigger the AI flight block to be AI behavior on. We want the takeoff recorder to play. And play is here. So now that's going to be trying to take off and move for us. We don't have any points programmed yet, but we'll get to that. We also want it to unlock the connector and unlock the landing gear. And just for good measure, we're going to come into the mover and we're going to turn precision mode on and collision avoidance on. I know we've done that in the other steps, but just in case, this is just a safety feature to add these two in. Keeps you from having little mishaps and accidents. Now, we're going to go into the timer block land. And what this is going to do is it's just going to switch us into the landing. So we want to change this to play. So it will just take over and it will start. Oh, we also want this to go back to AI behavior on. Then we want to do the landing timer block. And we want it to play. So this will turn the timer block back on, or the AI functions back on, and tell it to play through the landing sequence. We're also going to want to come in, and because accidents happen, precision mode on, collision avoidance on. Because we don't want to collide with something on the way back to the ship using autopilot. Alright, that is pretty much the setup there. Now we have to record the points. Now I've already said that you want to come into the AI recorder and make sure that your mobile base, oh, I have a point left in there, remove that point. And I probably have that in both. So we're just going to delete all waypoints. Now, one of the things you have to do is you have to make sure you're set to use the mobile base beacon as a reference, which we have. Which is good. That's really good. Now, for takeoff, we don't need a point. For landing, we do need a point right here on this connector. So we're going to add that waypoint now. Unfortunately, that's the first waypoint, but we can handle that and take care of that later. Now, on toolbar 3, we have the actions to add a waypoint. What we're going to do is we're going to come back to control bar 1. We're going to unlock, or we're going to lock our connector. Then we're going to unlock everything and we're going to lift straight up. We want to lift a little bit of a distance up so we can make sure to clear everything when we're flying back. Right there looks good to me. So we're going to record a waypoint on both of these recorder blocks. Now we can come into the recorder blocks and we can say land, because that's the only one with 2 points. And we can say reverse order. And those have been reversed. I know you can't see it, but they have. So when it gets to waypoint 0, there's one thing we have to do right here. We need to add an action. So at waypoint 0, you can set up an action. And unlike the remote control block, you only have one action. So timer blocks are going to be your best friend using these. What we need to do is we actually need to turn off collision avoidance here. And the reason you need to turn collision avoidance off when you get to this point is because otherwise it will not get close to the ship. It will try to avoid getting close to the ship that you're trying to dock with, which is a problem. So collision avoidance has to be off during this last final approach. All right. Now, waypoint 1, which is landed on that point, we need to set up another action, which is we need to start the docking sequence. It's got a 1-second timer on it, so it gives it a chance for the ship to kind of settle on that magnet mount, and then it docks. All right, so we've got both the points set on there. Now takeoff. In the takeoff, we have one waypoint. In this one waypoint, we need to set up an action where it's going to take the AI flight block and say AI behavior off. Once it gets to point 0 in the takeoff, we need to turn off the AI flight mechanics. Otherwise, we won't get control of the ship back. So this is really just telling it to relinquish control when you're done moving away from the ship. So, pretty critical. So that's pretty easy to set up. It's already done. We've got everything set up now. So we're going to land this back onto the ship. And before I dock back up and test this, I'm just going to do a quick check to make sure everything's right. The AI move. AI behavior is off. Precision mode is on. Collision avoidance is on. Min altitude, I have it set to 0. You should probably have that something like 5, just to keep it from the ground, or whatever the distance from the controller to the ground is, just to keep this from actually hitting the ground. I like to set the pitch angle and the max roll angle to as little as possible to actually force it to really truly align to the gravity. Now, the recorder, we know we've got that set up. That's set up good. That setup looks good. So now we should be able to, yeah, the blocks are on. We should be able to look at the timers now. Dock is set for 1 second. And we are behavior off, behavior off, behavior off, precision mode on, collision avoidance on, undock. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. The land, also 1 second. The AI behavior on, land play, precision mode on, collision avoidance on. So that's good. It will be set. And then the takeoff, AI behavior on, takeoff play, connector disconnect, landing gear disconnect. Just make sure that is set to unlock. And then precision mode on, collision avoidance on. Perfect. I think we're all set now. And the event controller, we've been through this. This one looks good too. So, now, we should be able to lock with P. Let's go to control bar 8. And we will actually grab our timer blocks. We will grab takeoff and put it on 1. And we'll just say trigger now. And not dock. My game is frozen up. There we go. Timer block land. And put that on 2. Alright. Now, let's take it for a test run. Take off. Takes us right up to that point. And precision mode should turn off here once it gets to that point. It does take it a minute to figure out how to get its bearings and get you to that point. So now that we're at that point, we have control. We can fly it around, we can do whatever we got to do, go off and do things. Now, we're going to leave this hovering here, and just to show that it is actually set to reference the position of this base, we're going to move it. I love this base. This is a really cool looking mobile base. And I can't remember who it was from. I will have to put a link in the description. Now, we're going to pull this forward. It's kind of slow. But I could turn on the thrusters and make it faster. I just haven't bothered to. Alright, we're going to leave this right here. We don't need to move it far. Now, we're going to jump cut back to me sitting in the ship. Alright, now that we're back in the KiZo, we're going to tell it dock by hitting the timer block 2, the docking timer block. And it's just flying me right back to that point there. Once it gets to that point, it's going to try to hit that point. Like I said, finding that first point. It has a hard time with that sometimes. Now that it hit it, though, it's going to bring us straight down to this ship. And it should dock right up. So now, we are docked up, except, for some reason, the landing gear didn't lock. Which happens sometimes. So, I'm not sure why the landing gear didn't lock, but it didn't. That's weird. Okay. So, just like everything with space engineers, when you expect it to do something, it does something different. It was pretty seamless, though, and you saw that even though the ship moved, it came right back and landed right on this dock with no problem for us. Which is pretty cool. Now, I showed you that the precision is not really there for getting to that first point, so you're not going to want to use this in an enclosed environment. You're only going to want to use this in open areas. You see I'm using the farthest connector away from everything else, and that's what you're going to want to do. Keep it clear, give the AI room to work, because it's not as smart as you would think. You would think that it would just do a straight line straight up to there, kind of like the remote blocks used to do, or still do, but it doesn't. I mean, it will take off again, but you can see it moves around. It doesn't go straight to the point. It takes a minute for it to find those points. Give your drone or your ship that's running on autopilot room to work. Otherwise, you're gonna have crashes, and it will be a problem. But for the most part, it's pretty cool because it doesn't matter how far away I get, and if somebody moves that base. Oh. Now it's going to try and get me back to that base. Now, I told it to take off just now, so it's going to get me back to that point. I don't need to land yet, so it's not a big deal. Either way, it takes me home, which is, I guess, something I would prefer my car to do when I've been out drinking. But, you know, nothing's perfect. Now, I think this is a pretty cool setup. If you like it, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section. And I'll try to go into greater detail if you have questions or concerns about this setup. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.